In the summer of 2017, the global supply chain stopped. At Maersk, the largest shipping conglomerate on Earth, 45,000 computers and 4,000 servers went dark in less than 7 minutes. The truckers were locked out of ports. Container ships sat dead in harbors from Mumbai to Los Angeles. $10 billion evaporated from the global economy in an afternoon. This is File 11, the Doomsday Worm. The attack began in Ukraine. A Russian military intelligence hacking unit codenamed Sandworm, formally designated as Unit 74455 of the GRU, the Foreign Military Intelligence Directorate of the Russian Federation, had been conducting an ongoing, undeclared cyber war against the Ukrainian state since 2014. By 2017, Sandworm's strategic priority was economic damage. They wanted to inflict maximum harm on Ukrainian commerce. To do that, they needed access to a piece of software that every Ukrainian business was mandated by law to run. That software was M.E.Doc, a small, locally developed accounting and tax filing package, built by a Kyiv-based company called Linkos Group. By 2017, M.E.Doc was running on the desktops of approximately 80% of Ukrainian businesses, including the local subsidiaries of every multinational corporation operating in the country. Maersk had a Ukrainian office. FedEx had a Ukrainian office. Mondelez, the makers of Cadbury chocolate, had a Ukrainian office. Merck Pharmaceuticals had a Ukrainian office. Every one of those subsidiaries was, by Ukrainian law, running M.E.Doc. Sandworm compromised the M.E.Doc update servers. They obtained the developer certificate Linkos Group used to sign legitimate software updates, and they prepared a payload. The payload they prepared was called NotPetya, a name coined by security researchers later because the malware was, on first inspection, designed to look exactly like a ransomware family called Petya. The Petya family had been active for over a year. Its hallmark was an aggressive master boot record encryption that locked the user out of their machine. With a familiar red and black skull and crossbones screen demanding $300 in Bitcoin to decrypt. NotPetya wore the costume of Petya. It displayed the same skull. It demanded the same Bitcoin ransom. It used the same decryption key payment portal. But under the costume, NotPetya was a wiper. The master boot record encryption was permanent. There was no decryption key. The Bitcoin payment portal was a placebo. Sandworm had no intention of returning anyone's data. They simply wanted to destroy it. And they had armed NotPetya with the most powerful publicly available cyber weapon ever leaked. Eternal Blue had been developed by the United States National Security Agency in the Tailored Access Operations Division sometime around 2015. It exploited a vulnerability in the Microsoft Server Message Block Protocol, the kernel-level networking layer that allows Windows machines on the same network to share files and printers. Eternal Blue let an attacker with no credentials and no user interaction take complete control of any Windows machine that had not been patched against the underlying SMB vulnerability. In April 2017, an anonymous group calling itself the Shadow Brokers leaked Eternal Blue and dozens of other classified NSA exploits onto the public internet. Microsoft released an emergency patch within weeks. But hundreds of millions of Windows machines worldwide ran on patch cycles measured in months, or on enterprise networks running legacy embedded systems in years. By June 2017, the NSA's most powerful cyber weapon had been weaponized by Russian military intelligence and embedded inside the largest tax filing software in Ukraine. On June 27, 2017, at 1:30 in the morning Kyiv local time, the compromised update went live. When the M.E.Doc update completed on the morning of June 27, the wiper executed. The first machines to go down were inside Ukraine. The accounting offices of every major Ukrainian business simultaneously turned over to a black screen, then displayed the red and black skull. By 11 a.m. Kyiv time, 2/3 of Ukraine's corporate computing infrastructure was, in technical terms, gone. But the worm did not stop at Ukraine's borders. Modern multinational corporations operate on flat, unsegmented internal networks. Every laptop and every server in every Maersk office worldwide was logically part of the same corporate domain. The Maersk Ukraine subsidiary, sitting in Odessa, was technically inside the same Active Directory forest as the Maersk Copenhagen headquarters. Network traffic between subsidiaries was routed over corporate VPNs. From the worm's perspective, Odessa and Copenhagen were on the same network. Eternal Blue did the rest. The exploit took, on average, less than 6 seconds to fully compromise a vulnerable Windows machine on the local network. It then used the compromised machine to scan for additional vulnerable hosts, jumped to those hosts in parallel, and continued the cascade. Within 7 minutes, Maersk's entire global infrastructure, 46,000 endpoints across 130 countries, was infected. Outside Maersk, the same cascade hit Mondelez. It hit Merck Pharmaceuticals, the third largest pharmaceutical company in the world. It hit FedEx's TNT Express subsidiary in the Netherlands. It hit Cadbury chocolate factories in Tasmania. It hit a hospital network in Pittsburgh. It hit the Heritage Valley Health System in Pennsylvania, knocking the system offline mid-surgery in 17 hospitals. It hit the radiation monitoring systems at the Chernobyl exclusion zone, where the technicians had to switch back to Soviet-era manual radiation counters. The blast radius did not stop at multinational corporations. It crossed jurisdictions, industries, and continents. The wiper consumed every Windows network it could reach, propagating laterally through corporate VPNs at the speed of unpatched SMB packets. By the end of June 27, the global financial damage was estimated at over $10 billion. It was, and remains, the most economically damaging cyber attack in human history. As the monitors went black and displayed the skull and crossbones ransom note, corporate executives across 30 countries scrambled to pay the $300 ransom. But cybersecurity researchers analyzing the malware in real time made a sickening discovery. NotPetya was a facade. The ransom note was theater. The Bitcoin wallet was operational, the decryption portal was operational. The technical hooks for paying and receiving a key were all functioning. But the underlying encryption code did not store the key anywhere. The master boot record was being encrypted with a randomly generated session key. And that key was never written to disk, never transmitted over the network, never recoverable. The wiper was masquerading as ransomware to delay the response. Inside Maersk's IT headquarters in Copenhagen, the realization arrived around 5 p.m. local time. Staffers were already sprinting through hallways shouting at employees to power down their machines, physically pulling Ethernet cables out of walls to sever network connections before the worm could spread further. But the worm had finished spreading hours earlier. The damage was already done. All 150 of Maersk's global Active Directory domain controllers, the central authentication infrastructure of the entire company, were corrupted. Without working domain controllers, Maersk could not log a single user into a single computer. The company, in operational terms, no longer functioned. Their decentralized backup strategy did not save them. The backups had been replicated, in real time, across the same global network the worm had just consumed. Every backup snapshot was, by the time the IT team checked, also corrupted. Maersk was staring at total corporate annihilation. A senior infrastructure architect working through the night ran a desperate query. He filtered the global office inventory for any node that had been physically disconnected from the corporate network. During the 7-minute infection window, The query returned a single result. A small Maersk office in Accra, Ghana, running a single regional domain controller, had been knocked offline by a local power grid outage that morning. The office's backup generator had not yet kicked in when NotPetya hit. By the time the generator restored power and the server came back online, the worm had already finished its global cascade. The Ghana domain controller was the only Maersk Active Directory replica on Earth that had not been corrupted. The architect picked up a phone. The Ghana technician removed the lone surviving hard drive from the Accra domain controller and carefully placed it into a padded transport case. A Maersk courier was already on a commercial flight to Accra. He landed, took possession of the drive, and immediately boarded the next outbound flight to Copenhagen. 9 hours later, the drive landed at Kastrup. The Maersk IT lead met him at the arrivals gate. A Mercedes with a Danish police escort drove the drive directly to the Esplanaden corporate headquarters. By midnight on June 28, the Ghana drive was inserted into a fresh server in Maersk's Copenhagen war room. The Active Directory database loaded, the integrity check passed. The pre-infection global state of the entire company was intact. In a single 9-hour stale backup sitting on a single hard drive that had survived only because of an unscheduled power outage in West Africa 12 hours before the attack. Over the next 10 days, 300 technicians flown in from across Europe rebuilt Maersk from scratch. 49,000 laptops were re-imaged. 4,000 servers were rebuilt. Every domain controller across 130 countries was redeployed from the Ghana snapshot. The team worked in shifts. Technicians slept on the operations center floor. The CEO of Maersk personally addressed the team on the third day. On July 7, 2017, 10 days after the cascade, Maersk resumed operations. The financial cost was staggering. Maersk reported a $300 million loss directly attributable to the attack. Merck Pharmaceuticals reported $870 million in damages. FedEx's TNT subsidiary reported $400 million. Mondelez reported $188 million. The total estimated global cost of the NotPetya attack across every infected company exceeded $10 billion. It was, and remains, the most economically destructive cyber attack in human history. In October 2020, the United States Department of Justice unsealed a federal indictment of 6 Russian GRU officers belonging to Unit 74455. The indictment named Sandworm, it named NotPetya. It named the M.E.Doc supply chain compromise as a deliberate act of Russian state cyber war against Ukraine. None of the named officers have ever been arrested. The lesson of NotPetya is, in 2024, an architectural lesson about every network you depend on. Sandworm did not intend to hit Maersk. They did not intend to hit FedEx. They did not intend to hit Merck Pharmaceuticals or the Heritage Valley Health System, or the Chernobyl radiation monitoring stations. Their target was Ukraine. They wanted to inflict economic damage on a single country. They armed their wiper with the most powerful publicly available cyber weapon in existence, embedded it in the mandatory tax software of the Ukrainian state, and pushed go. Within 7 minutes, the weapon escaped Ukraine. The reason it escaped is the architecture of the modern multinational corporation. Every Ukrainian subsidiary of every Western multinational was, by the simple logic of corporate IT, on the same Active Directory forest as its global parent. Every VPN tunnel was a conduit. Every shared file server was a stepping stone. Every unpatched Windows machine on the corporate network was, in Eternal Blue's eyes, the same machine. In a flat, unsegmented corporate network, jurisdictional borders do not exist. The blast radius cannot be controlled. Modern state-sponsored cyber weapons are not surgical instruments. They are weapons of mass economic disruption. When a nation-state deploys a self-propagating worm, the weapon does not respect the target's jurisdiction. It propagates wherever the network topology allows. It hits the intended target, and then it hits everyone else who happens to be plugged into the same global infrastructure. Maersk survived because of a power outage in West Africa. Every Maersk customer, every Mondelez customer, every Merck customer, every patient in 17 Pittsburgh hospitals, all of them depended on June 27, 2017, on the integrity of corporate networks that had nothing to do with them. You are no longer the weakest link in your own security. The networks you depend on are the vulnerability. The session is logged, the connection is closed. The files remain open.